Senator Bernie Sanders just received a huge endorsement from South Carolina from a former Biden backer. Now, this is an interesting story. So, the person I'm referring to is Dolly Myers. Now, Dolly Myers is a prominent African American woman who was elected to South Carolina's Richland County Council back in 2016. Now, she had announced on Wednesday that she has switched her support in the 2020 Democratic primary from former Vice President Joe Biden to Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, as I'm going to point out, this is this is a pretty huge endorsement because it comes from somebody who doesn't describe themselves as a firebrand brand progressive, but actually somebody who is pragmatic, practical, and a middle of the road politician. So let me give you her reasoning. She says first about electability, and this is in the interview in the Associated Press. Quote, I looked at his electability, or I looked at that and I thought, he's right. He's unafraid and unapologetic. I like the fact that he is willing to fight for a better America for at least, for the least, the fallen, the left behind. That's pretty solid. Now, look, this is big because South Carolina has an important primary. It's very important for any politician to win, especially somebody like Bernie Sanders. Now, the reason is that it would show that Bernie Sanders has the backing of a truly diverse coalition. Now, look, we know that younger people, especially younger people of color and women, support Bernie Sanders far more than generally white males. And so the myth of the Bernie bro is again a myth. It's ridiculous. It's not backed up by actual demographic information. Young people, especially young people of color, overwhelmingly support Bernie Sanders. But in the minds of the old guard, if you don't win South Carolina, then, well, you don't have the backing of the African American community. And so if Bernie Sanders manages to win South Carolina, well, then that, again, it is another piece of evidence that that narrative is just not true, right? So now there is an issue in South Carolina. Bernie Sanders is way behind Joe Biden. Biden has about 36% support so far in the newest polls, where Bernie Sanders comes in about second place with about 15%. And so, man, Sanders has a lot of ground to make up, and hopefully one of these endorsements actually helps him. Now, last month, for her part, Myers joined more than a dozen other South Carolina elected officials in making an endorsement for Joe Biden, saying that he was the only candidate with the broad and diverse coalition of support that we need to win. Myers told the AP that now she does not feel the same way. She said that she had backed Biden because she saw him as a candidate who could possibly appeal to Republican voters disenfranchised by the president. Instead of Biden, quote, it was a compromise choice. I didn't find anybody's candidacy electrifying, but I did find Joe Biden's candidacy to be reassuring in a sort of normal American kind of way. So now that's interesting. And look, understand that I think that's the view of a lot of establishment Democrats, a lot of the more comfortable Democrats. Joe Biden represents a return to the normal, right? A return to civility and a return to, oh, look, Uncle Joe's going to bring us back to Obama, basically. Now, the problem is that normal is not good. Normal brought us Donald Trump. So at least that normal did, right? And this normal, of course, with income inequality that was continuing to rise, student loan debt continuing to rise, healthcare costs continuing to rise. All these things, that was back in the normal. That, again, is what helped Donald Trump in his faux populism. He was able to exploit that, and that helped him win. He was also able to exploit, to a great degree, the undercurrent of racism that was, that is bubbling up underneath the surface of the country. And so, yes, that normal did bring us Donald Trump, and that's not good. And so I think in examining that, she said, well, actually, let me give her quote here. She said, Myers she said that she started to feel that Biden's candidacy, while familiar and perhaps comfortable, wasn't going to be enough to inspire young voters. Quote, voting what I think is best for all of us, not just me, and saying that's why she changed to Bernie Sanders. In fact, here's more. I'm a 50-year-old black woman, and I tend to be middle of the road. I'm not a left-wing liberal. I'm not even a left-wing Democrat, but I am a realist. So that's important, right? So here you have somebody, again, who doesn't describe themselves as at all progressive or left-wing or anything like that, but says, I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders because I'm a realist. That's super important, right? That shows that there are people out there that look at Bernie Sanders and think, that's the pragmatic choice. Well, when that happens, that's when we win. Everything she has said there is the case that we are trying to make for years, right? That only Bernie Sanders can turn out the vote, can turn out young people, and beat Donald Trump. And there is lots of polling that backs him up, tons of it. Now, as far as Biden goes, Biden has way too many weaknesses. He's got a ton of baggage, a lot like Hillary Clinton, including how he supported cutting Social Security. He's worked with segregationists. He's worked with credit card companies to make discharging debt a lot harder and students impossible. His policy positions, of course, are very weak, don't do anything to solve the gigantic problems of climate change, student loan debt, and the increasing costs of healthcare. Those are the issues that matter. In fact, healthcare is one of the most important issues for voters in this election cycle. Now, finally, in a tweet here, Sanders thanked Meyer for her support. He wrote this, quote, "Together, we will defeat the most dangerous president in modern history." So now, look, Sanders has a lot of work, a lot of inroads when it comes to winning South Carolina. But even if he does really well and manages to catch up to Joe Biden and makes it a close enough race, then that can make the difference as well and continue to feed into his momentum after Iowa and New Hampshire. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.